When was your last performance? Did you have an inkling that it was likely to be your last performance? What was that like and where was it?
I was at the Comedy Attic in Bloomington, Indiana on the 14th of March. I was there
Right.
that whole weekend. Carmen Morales was opening for me, and we both knew that it was probably the last one for a while.
Right.
And it
Right.
was, they were doing everything they could. Everyone knew that we were about to shut everything down, right? So
Right.
they were limiting how many people could come into the room. They had checkerboard seating, so that the tables were every other that they were
Right.
seating, and they were giving them wipes on the way in, and they had done a deep clean before and after every show.
Right.
So, but we knew that it was probably the last set, and we were a little panicky, Carmen and I.
Right. Right. Right.
We
Right.
forgot
Right.
that, as Jeff Goldblum has always said, life finds a way.
Right. Uh, okay. What was that like for you having to deliver comedy amidst the emerging pandemic? What was it like for you emotionally? And what were the laughs like? I'm just so curious what it meant to you and what it was like.
Everybody wanted to be out, right? Everyone wanted to give it I mean, Bloomington, Indiana is a particularly smart community
Right.
in the way
Right.
that I'm sure that there's tinfoil hat people, but it's, for the most part, it was just people who knew that that this might be it, right?
Right.
And so they wanted to get away from the news, and they wanted to get away from the fear, but they
Right.
also wanted someone to make fun of that fear
Right.
and to sort of address it in some way, shape, or form. So
Right.
I think that's the good news, is that people in those last couple of days before we went on total shutdown, they were looking for someone to sort of seriously joke about it. Or in
Right.
my case, I was like, because I knew that it was serious. I knew that it was horrible, and I don't do. I mean, I have some dark jokes, but I don't do a lot of topical stuff, and I don't do a lot of, hey, it's the end times.
Right.
So,
Kind of
let,
like
let's laugh about it. Yeah.
right. But you're not known for biting political commentary as a central part of your
Right. It's not. I'm not a topical comic,
right.
but the topic is so overwhelming that I don't think that there's a way to not talk about it. Right.
So are you free to give out what could you tell? I mean, will it spoil the impact? Could you let me know how you addressed it or how you joked about it or either
Oh,
in a general?
well, I mean, the thing is I was doing this bit about how there's all these like creepy, crazy end time rapture people, and so I essentially just unpacked that. I mean,
In other
it's
words, you already had an existing routine along those
about those
lines.
people, and
Oh,
then I just sort of narrowed the focus on it
right,
to make it specifically about the times that we're living in, which,
right,
because I think that it's important to take the teeth out of the despair.
right, right,
Because guess what despair doesn't do? It doesn't motivate.
right. I'm not going to ask you your specific earnings, but give me an idea. You are a very, very active comedian. You have a presence online. I mean, you have a lot of different people who know about you and your work. Right.
Are you trying to ask me about my income, the hit?
Yeah, I'm trying to get an idea, in terms of the number of gigs. If you want to be dollar specific, you can, but I'm just trying to understand what it means to you losing all of this and
Well,
how.
let's just say that the winter, and that essentially March. If March 14th was my last gig on the road, that's half of March, all of April, and all of May have been canceled, which
Right.
is 10 weeks of work. And
Right.
of those 10 weeks, I probably work 6 of them out.
You
And I
probably work,
make
and when you work a week, it means like how many shows a week are you
it's some
doing?
anywhere between 5 to 7 shows,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
anywhere between 2 grand and 6 grand a week.
Right.
So
Right.
6 weeks of work is $35,000 max.
Right.
I mean, that I've probably lost, which is a great deal of money, as you can
Right.
imagine. But here's the thing: it's the money's not going to bring me back to life. It's not going to. It's not going to bring. I have to tell myself every day that the financial hit. I'm going to have to dig myself out of this pit the same way everyone else is. I had a friend of mine
Right.
who said, I was just this, I'm going to be poor after this. And I was like, well, you weren't rich. And she said,
Right.
I know, but I was getting up to even. And
Right.
now I'm going to have to rebuild and dig myself out again. And I'm like, yes. And I was doing financially what I consider, I mean, I was making like 70 a year, right? Which,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned, I'm rich.
Right.
I
Right.
can buy a pair of shoes. I don't have to look at the price. Granted,
Right.
I
Right.
don't want $14,000 shoes, but I mean, that's wealth to me, right?
Right.
So we're all, I'm lucky that I have some savings, and I'm sort of scrambling for people that still have jobs and stuff, if they want to see stand up online, and if they want to buy my merch, which I
Right.
just invested right before this happened. I invested in new T-shirts because I'm also, I have 2 problems. One is I was supposed to put an album out this year, and I
R-
hopefully still am, but I need to work on it. And the other thing is that I invested $5,000 in new merch because of those new jokes and that new album.
So, did you have new key phrases built around new material? Like, what would be an example of a T-shirt you bought that was meant to be like a keepsake for this live show and your album and new material? What would be an example of what it
Well,
said?
essentially I have 3 new pieces of merch. I have a dad shirt, which has quotes from the last 4 albums, like
Right,
different bits I've done about my dad, and
right,
it has some of the different quotes from those other albums. It's not all of the material, it's not all of the quotes, because my
right,
father's very prolific. So the dad quote shirt has some new material on it as well. I have
right,
a squish shirt, which is just a cute kind of,
right.
and that one, that's a
That
t-shirt,
could
and
go really big. I mean, that's a really that has
that's
so
adorable,
it's
right?
a
And sure,
squish
there's
whoever you wish. Right,
right. The art, I like to do shirts and art and merch that has shirts that I would wear, and art that I'm in, that I'm not, I'm not ashamed of. So
not
the other thing
ashamed
is
of. Right.
a challenge coin with my dad's face on it, with his quote, "Never say no without a number." And the shirt
That's
could
kind of
be
famous. That's kind of famous because that was quoted by Maria Bamford in
great.
her.
It's on Maria Bamford's last album too.
Right,
We both, I mean, the thing is we both wrote a bit about my dad.
right.
Which,
So
by the way, my father is psyched about that.
so does he? I mean, I do want to ask about. You had a number in the ending part of that very successful show where you had over 200 Zoom participants. You ended 3 of the routines, and I am not as expert on all of your material, although I've seen your shows live and love your work. You ended with 3 routines that include, started with thing about sexual harassment, then morphed into your father, how your father approaches thing, and Maria feeling pretty, and then the thing about him helping this guy out, work out a deal, and then you had some other dad routine. I mean, you had a lot of material dad related ending. How much of, I'm just curious because you're a working comic who's working on, how much of that ending section, which were like at least 3 routines.
It's 15
Start,
minutes.
yeah,
It's 15 to 20 minutes of new stuff about my dad. Yeah.
right, and that was mostly all new. That you were
It's
trying
all
that
new.
it was very, very good, and you.
Thanks.
I'm just sort of curious, technically, when you were doing that show, which you were describing it, telling people, "Don't tape it, don't audio. I'm working this out for my new album," was was over almost all of the material that you were doing sort of new in terms of either records you had already done? Was this all new material, not counting material that you may be doing on tour now, but was this essentially all new material for the new album that you were working out during the course of your set?
It's all new material for the new album. There's no not material I'm not doing on the road because I'm constantly getting rid of old stuff and bringing in new stuff to work on the new album. And
Right,
for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been trying to get rid of anything from the last album. I think there's one line that will be repeated just because it is contextual. Anyway,
right,
I
right.
mean,
But you're,
joke
in other words,
wise,
while on
there's
the road now,
something to
which
it.
is kind of nervy, in other words, while on the road now, until you have been on, I mean, until March 15th, the last few months, you were, while you were basically there playing to your fans and you were giving them your best versions of your new material, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean that's how stand up works, right? You have
right,
to work on
right,
the only way to write the new material for me.
y-
I mean, I'm sure there's some comics who write it on the page and then practice it and then don't change it once it gets to the stage, but the way I tend to write is on
right.
stage.
Right. So you had something that you said to Jackie that made me fall over, and I want to just get this understood correctly.
You mean
You
Lori?
said there's many things you say, but in terms of
Did I say it to Lori or did I say it to Maria?
I meant to Lori. I meant to Lori.
Okay.
Your Jack, obviously. I mean, it was this statement where you were describing a particular streaming show where there were 75 people in the audience and or I don't recall or who had donated, and you came out of that show with $600 or you split 600. It was actually a substantive amount of money, and tell me about that show because that is a kind of success. uh, so I am very curious, because you actually mentioned the attendees and the dollar figure. So what do you think happened? And just walk me through it because it was very successful. And I'd like to link to that show if it's streamable
It is
someplace.
not streamable. I mean, here's the thing about
Oh,
these Zoom shows is that they are one-offs.
oh,
Because
okay.
I'm working on a new album, I don't
Right.
need
You
it
don't
to
want the
be
shit to get
released
out.
before
Right,
I release it, if you know what I'm
right,
saying.
right,
And
right,
the audio
right,
quality of a Zoom, and if one more fucking person tells me to release a Zoom album, they can suck my dick
right,
because I'm not doing it. It's not,
right,
I want
right,
to do a normal album. If I wanted to do a studio album, I would do a studio album. It would be a different thing. What I'm trying to do here is stand-up comedy, the way
right,
I do it. I mean, you can
right,
define stand-up comedy however you want to define stand-up comedy. You can call it what if you say I am a stand-up comic and then you stand up and break watermelons on stage, that is stand-up comedy. That is your
right,
version of it.
right,
It's I'm not here to tell you that what you do isn't stand-up comedy, but my version of it involves an audience. And
right,
so I can't do these Zoom shows and then post some link to which you can watch it. You
right,
know, that's,
right,
I mean, because I'm working on the jokes. I'm trying to get the words right. I'm trying to get the timing correct. And which is why Zoom works better than sort of Facebook Live or Instagram Live or YouTube Live or other Twitch and stuff like that, because you can hear the comedy, right?
right,
And because you can hear the response of the audience, which is necessary if I'm going to get the timing right, and because that's the drug. The drug is for me to hear someone get the damn joke.
right. And that
So
was what was so interesting. Anyway, so walk me through that who was the host of that? How many
I
people were on
hosted
that?
it. I just threw it up in 2 hours. I just
No, no,
said, does
not the one.
anybody
In other
want
words,
to?
not the one that I'm talking about that you
The
had 200.
75. You're talking about the
Yeah, yeah. Tell me
75.
how that worked. What did
That
you
was
do?
okay.
How
That
did
was
you promote it?
impromptu because Maria's doing shows every day. And so I
Right,
was like, maybe someone would come to mine.
right,
So I
right,
set up a show and I looked at how she had set it up. I copied some of the safety precautions she had done, and but she wasn't unmuting anybody,
right,
because she was afraid there would be a lot of talking. And plus, with these Zoom shows, if you're doing anything else, everyone can hear it. Like the dog goes by, the kids are going by,
right, right,
you're
right.
doing dishes. So I just gave people 2 hours. I was like, you want to do it? Here's the link, but
And
you
this was
have to
on Twitter.
register.
Was it
Pardon?
Twitter or email? How did you get the word out?
Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, I see. Okay.
For the one that over the 300 people came to, the
Right,
registered for,
right.
that one I sent out to my email list, and I did an Instagram thing. And but the first one I just did Twitter and Facebook, and I was like, if you have $10, donate $10 for the show, because you're about to see 30 minutes that isn't on any, and I'm only doing 30 minutes because it's hard to sustain the energy you need to do to yell into the internet. You're yelling
Right.
into the internet for 30 minutes. It's a well. There's two shows you're talking about. The first one I just did, and then my friend Carmen Morales called and said, hey, you're doing that thing in an hour. Can I do a guest set?
Oh, I see.
She was the one I worked with in Bloomington,
Right,
that last
right,
gig. And I
right,
said, yeah. And I gave her some of the money. I gave her a percentage of the money. The
right.
gig that I did with 300 people, that I said that I would take 50% because I was running it, and I had to buy the professional version of Zoom, which is $2,000 a year.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I kept 50% of that money, and I split the 25 and 25 with Kyle and Lori.
Oh, okay. No, I want to go back to the one with the concept that you had 75 people. To me, it's mind blowing when I'm talking to other people in this who are touring performers. You had 75 people and you came away with $600 for a half hour
Yeah,
of
but if
really good.
75 people all gave me $10,
Oh my God, that's great.
that's
That's right.
$750.
That's right. And so was your total gross for the day 750 because it was just you?
No, no, some people don't have $10.
Oh, I got it. But they all gave. That's really
But a lot
great.
of people, yeah, some people gave five. A lot of people gave five. Some people gave 20.
You've made that model work. I mean, it's
No,
not like
one.
tell me what your take is about other comedians doing live streaming and what's happening in the field now.
Uh,
Do you have any because
Stand up
what
is stand up, right? So there are comics that they're mad about somehow doing internet comedy. They don't think it's cool, or they think it's too cool. I'm uncertain what they think. I don't want, and I also don't want to think about it, because here's what I know is I need to do stand up comedy. If stand up comedy changes, right? If the definition of stand up comedy changes, where, well, just like it did, when I first started doing stand up comedy, I was doing stand up comedy in a bar in a Best Western, right?
right,
And that's in 1985. But between 1997 and 2000, it was just more hipsters in bars, right?
right,
Starting
right.
around 2001, it's all coffee shops and hat stores and
Oh, I
laundromats.
see.
And then, sometimes it's a chain comedy club, the Improv, the Helium, the Funny Bone, these chains.
Right,
Or it's a one-off comedy club. It's Acme, it's Bloom
right,
Comedy Attic, it's Rooster Teeth Feathers, it's, whatever it is, Laughs in Seattle. It's a stand-up comedy club dedicated, or it's theaters opening up for, bigger names who can fill these theaters.
right,
Um,
right,
Carnegie Hall. I did Carnegie Hall with Brian Regan. Carnegie Hall isn't set up for stand-up comedy. It's set up
right,
for opera.
Right.
I'm screaming to the fourth tier. Don't you want to hear my Dune joke? That's weird. I mean, so this is just a new venue. And if I have to figure out how to do it, I will, because I need to do stand-up comedy. And if I can figure out a way to make a living at it, that's a win. You know,
Right.
I
Right.
I can't tell, I can only encourage people. I mean, if you really want to do your art or the thing you have a passion for, you figure out a way to do the thing you have a passion for. I mean, and I've said this before, I look at actors, right?
Right.
People have said, "Do you want to act?" to me, and I've said, "Of course." Uh, do I act? I do not. I do not.
Right.
People who
Right.
are actors act. They do
Right.
weird dinner theater. They get together with their friends and make sketches. They put
Right.
up on YouTube. They freaking act. And
Right.
so for me, I want to do stand up, and so that's what I do.
Right. So, what are some takeaways that for you about doing this as while we're in this horrible circumstances that are lessons you're learning and adapting as you're moving forward, and you think other comics should, based on what you're learning about this
Well,
process?
I like the Zoom shows, and I'm sure there's going to be other software that'll be more protected and stuff to protect from
Right.
hecklers. But what you want to do is you want to there's a couple there's different models of how to do it, but you got to make people register to come and see the show.
Right.
The way Carmen does it, she makes them register, but then they also have to pay in advance, like whether it's $1 or $5, they'd have to, and then she emails every single person a Zoom link.
Oh.
So that then then she doesn't get bombed. It's not hacker bombed. So
Oh, that's a good way. Pay
mhm.
at least okay.
Yeah, you got to prepay. What we did with the other night was there was a waiting room, and essentially a real comedy club has a tech person, has a door guy, right? Has a door
Right.
person. You should get a second person, a co-host, to
Right.
run one or two people to run the room, to let
Right.
people in from the waiting room. And then what I would recommend is that because people don't really know how loud their surroundings are,
Right.
you essentially let 15 or 20 people, you unmute those people to be the laughers.
Right.
That allows the comic to hear the laughter, and it allows the other audience members to sort of get an idea, a communal idea as well.
That's yeah, it worked really well. I mean, you had all these early technical difficulties.
Right,
Now,
the first 10 minutes was a little grim, but we're learning. We're all learning. I'll
and
say
it,
this is I don't think the show should be more than an hour or an hour and a half. It's
right,
or one comic doing more than 20 or 30 minutes
right.
because it's hard to concentrate.